Hello, everyone. It's Aaron from Onetograde. In this episode, I'll be taking you through a personal automation that I built that helps me organize my notes and the people that I talk with, essentially building a second brain. What I automated was Google Calendar and Notion to allow me to store any notes, history of meetings, and everything into Notion so that I can leverage some cool Notion AI features. Let's take a look at the challenge that I faced. So the reality was that when I would jump into a meeting, I would go to my inbox and click on compose a new message and just start typing in my notes there. Sometimes I would copy and paste it into Slack. Sometimes I would just send an email to myself to try to follow up, or I would just send an email directly to the client. That became problematic because if I needed to remember something from last month, uh, my brain is not going to remember that. And so, what I decided to do when I started Want to Grade was actually build an entire framework around the concept of building a second brain in Notion. Now, that was great in theory, but I actually realized I was taking a lot of manual time to go into Notion, to go to the meetings database item, to click create meeting, to put who the meeting attendee was, and it just wasn't working as much as I wanted. So this was actually one of the first and earliest automations that I built for Onetograde for my business. And it's simply an automation that creates people in Notion and also creates meeting records so that I can just have everything in one spot, and it notifies me as well. The tools that we use, Google Calendar, Notion, Slack, and all built on Make. The solution I wanted to automate in order to centralize. So what I mean by that is I knew that if I could automate it, I was going to follow the automation to allow for all my notes to be centralized. I also wanted to leverage Notion AI, their intelligent search, and just make it simple for me so I don't have to think too much about it. Quick summary before I jump into the actual make scenario to show you how it works. First of all, it detects for new events. It puts some filters. You'll see why in a second. It grabs the details about that meeting and then creates a record, a person record, as well as a meeting record in Notion, and then sends me a DM via Slack so that as soon as the meeting's starting, I can just click the link and it takes me to the Notion page and I can just start typing away. So that's what we're doing today. Let's take a look at the actual make scenario. So, of course, our trigger is Google Calendar. I only run this once a day, so every night at 10 p.m. This is what runs, and it's just all events created. So, I kept it pretty straightforward. Now, this filter is interesting. So, I use my email or my calendar as my to-do list as well. So, essentially, I'll show you my calendar. So, you're going to see there's a lot of things that are happening. Like it looks like I have a lot of meetings, but the reality is that a lot of these are empty. Like this is just me, and like this is what I'm doing here, and this is what like I have notes to make sure I do this. So a lot of these are just like things that I'm doing, right? Like to-do lists. So I don't have to think about it. It's a productivity hack that I have. I just put it on my calendar. It's called time blocking, and then tomorrow I'll wake up and see what I have to do tomorrow because it's just on my calendar and I have an hour blocked away. But I didn't need Notion to create all of these meetings, quote unquote. So the first thing is it's just throwing away any event that does not have and that has more than one attendee, right? So pretty straightforward. So if it's just me on the meeting on the Google Calendar invite, don't move forward from here. It then goes into three routes. The first one is to create a person record. The second one is to create the meeting record and add that person. And the third one is to send me a DM so that I can quickly access it. I don't have to go to Notion and find it. It just already exists in Slack where I spend most of my time. So we did have to use an iterator because this is running once a day. What it's doing is it's going to pull multiple events. So if that day I had more than one event scheduled, it was only pulling one of those. So we iterate the events out. So each of them runs as its own bundle. And I filtered out anything with Aaron or Marcelo. So these are our emails if you want to email us, but just to say hi. But essentially, if I'm scheduling a meeting with my co-founder Marcelo, I don't need that to be as a meeting note in Notion because we're talking often and regularly. We have a lot of syncs and touch points. So I didn't need for that to happen, so I'm automatically filtering that out. And it's before I create a person record, I wanted to see if they exist. So pretty straightforward. We put in the people database ID from Notion here, check to see if this email already exists. And if it does not, then it's going to go ahead and create it. If it does, it's just going to be good to go. It won't create a new record. Pretty straightforward, right? The next route is creating a meeting record. So this was also pretty straightforward. Like just put the meeting in the meeting record. I can even kind of start to show us over here on the left. We have meetings, and so I can take a look at like all the meetings that I have, and I can go in and start to like track and record things that I'm talking about. I'll show you why Notion in a second. But I also wanted to then attach the person to that meeting. And so in order to do that, I needed to then, after it created this meeting record, grab the output of that meeting ID. So I set that variable as like the meeting link, and then I iterated out to once again find for the person record and then add a person to that meeting. So they're now all connected. So I'm like creating a relational concept, if that makes sense. So here's a good example. So podcast recording June 10th, and then the person is one of our partners, DJS Digital, and then I can see all the previous meetings that I've had with David. So you can start to see I'm creating this relationship within Notion by linking the person and the meeting record together. Brilliant, right? And last one, just get the variable. So I needed to get the meeting link here and then put it in my DMs, say, hey, here's your meeting link. I can just quickly go to my own DMs that I have with myself, grab that link, it opens up in a new tab, and I'm ready to start typing away. Why do we take notes? Maybe your pay grade is too high to even take notes these days. It's not, because yeah, just take notes because you're gonna forget. Like there's no point in trying to remember. Like I actively try to forget, and I feel like I'm more productive of a person when I'm actively forgetting things. But that information has to sit somewhere and I have to be able to access it quickly, right? And so Notion is what I use, and I use their AI for this actually. So I'm going to show you. So in Notion AI, I can pretty much ask it anything. So like, when was the last meeting I had with Ashley? And I just talk to it. And this has everything. It has our integrations that we build. It has our like customer and their contacts. It has notes about that. Like, so you can start to see how, I mean, this is a very, very basic one, but I do ask Notion AI a ton of questions, and I essentially built like a whole like organizational database about it. So like, I don't know, it's crazy wild. Like if I were a new hire, describe Wondergrate, and it just is consuming all of the information that I've put into my system, and it can help not only onboard new team members but also help me remember things if I need it. And so this is where I store it away, put it into the filing cabinet in Notion, and I can come back to it later. So that is the internal automation. We made it. We were under 10 minutes, so nice work. I will put this make blueprint in the link below so you can check it out if you are interested in using this. Obviously, reach out if you have any questions, and as always, it's a pleasure sharing things I learned with you. Take care, everyone.